This lesson will be talking about economics, social justice, and the concept of money, how the Catholic Church views money, and how we as individuals and communities should view money. Now, in your reading, you can tell there are four principles, four ideas of the Catholic social justice doctrine taught by the Church. The first concept is that profit cannot be the only norm and sole goal of economic activity. As human beings, the purpose why we work, the purpose why businesses exist, is to make money, but is not the sole purpose. You cannot put money and profits over the individual. That cannot and should not ever happen. Which brings to point number two. The economy exists to serve the people, not people to serve the economy. This kind of is the one reason why communism is such a bad idea. Communism says the individual serves the whole collective, the commune. But that's completely backwards. In fact, the commune, the community, exists to serve the individual. Remember, the most important part of the society is the individual. And the economy exists to serve the people, exists to serve the individual. People are not cogs in the economy. We must never leave people behind. When people become cogs of the economy, you can just leave them behind. If the economy causes them to be unjust, be poor, starve, have horrible conditions. Within this rule, there are three concepts, three ideas that are given by the Catholic Church. The first is that every worker has the right to a job without unjust discrimination. Now, there's just discrimination. Like, I cannot go and just say, I want to be a doctor, you must hire me as a doctor. If you don't hire me as a doctor, that's discrimination. That is actually technically discrimination, but it's just discrimination if you don't have the qualifications for a job. Unjust discrimination is where you discriminate for something that is not important, not essential to the job. You see this race, ethnicity, creed, gender. These are all unjust discrimination aspects, and the workers have the right to a job without unjust discrimination. The second idea is that workers have the right to a just wage for a decent day's work. This is both sides. It is the worker will be paid a decent, just wage, a wage that is fair, and the worker will work hard at the job that they are in. Both sides have a requirement in this second principle. The third principle is the right to strike peacefully as a last resort to achieve economic justice. If you remember back to the Romero movie, the individuals who were often captured and tortured and executed, people who disappeared, were a lot of times organizers. They were community organizers. And their task was they were trying to almost unionize the workers. They weren't exactly unions, but they worked much the same way. They were trying to organize the people, and so there's strength in numbers. Whereas the powerful, what they wanted to do is they wanted the people to be disorganized. The masses are only strong if they are organized together. And if you destroy and kill the organizers, you're not able to get the people to organize and band together. And as economic workers, we have the right to strike peacefully. We have the right to not work as a last resort. Now, it does mention the idea of a last resort. So we should not get to this first. Just like when we talk about war. In war, war should be a last resort if everything else fails. Striking should be a last resort if all negotiations and talks have failed. The third concept is on a national scale. Richer nations must work hard for international solidarity. This is prudent for the United States. In the United States, we are a very wealthy nation. Therefore, our nation must work for solidarity. Remember, solidarity is carrying out people who are not in your group. As a nation, we cannot say, well, we're focusing on us. France can focus on France. Afghanistan can focus on Afghanistan. Chad can focus on Chad. Argentina can focus on Argentina. We focus on America. That's not the Catholic concept. We are one human family, and just because we live in America, we also have to care for every other nation in the world. And the fourth concept is we must imitate Jesus by having a special love for the poor. This is very important. We call it the preferential option for the poor. You hear this a lot in Catholic teaching, the preferential option for the poor. Jesus came and he helped out the poor and the most vulnerable first. And as human beings, society, and economy, we must try to help the poor and the most vulnerable first. We help those who are struggling the most first. And you start with the bottom and then you work your way up. So how should we view money? What is the purpose of money? What's the point of money? When we have money, what we should do with it, and how should we gain it? I'm going to give you a few tips, a few points as you go through life to recognize this is how we should and should not treat money. First, The earning of money and possessions are good, but they are never seen as the primary good. Remember, most sin is taking a secondary good and putting it over a primary good. We talk about this with sex, with gluttony. You see it with pride a lot. With pride, glory. So if you get a lot of fame, a lot of acclaim, that's actually a good thing. It becomes a bad thing when you seek the fame and the acclaim, you seek the glory for itself. And so whenever you see money as the ultimate goal, then it turns into sin. Just like nations should not see profit as the sole and goal of economic activity, human beings, individuals, should not see profit as the sole goal. Profit's a good thing. Money and possessions are actually good things. But when you see them as the primary good, there is where the devil starts to seep in. Now, the second thing I want you to know is that gaining money and possession should never cause you to treat another as something less than a child of God. So, as human beings, we are to look at other human beings as children of God, not as means of profit. And what happens as human beings, whenever we seek wealth, we focus so much on the wealth that we can forget about or mitigate the humanity or the child of God that exists inside each human being. And we see them as cogs in the machine for us to gain money, to gain wealth. This is why slavery can't exist, right? Anytime you want to have slavery, what you do is you take the human being and you see them as less than a human being. You see them as a means, as property, so that you can gain more and more and more wealth. Now, we don't have slavery today, but as human beings, we still do the same thing all the time. We look at human beings and we see our goals, and we see them, the other, as just an ends to achieve our goals. One last thing. A wealthy individual should be comfortable being poor. You see this, this is a very famous story. You see it in Matthew and Mark's group gospel, and also in Luke. The story of the rich young man. The rich young man comes to Jesus and says, "Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus says, "Follow the commandments." And the man says, "I have done all those." To which Jesus says, "One more thing you lack. Go, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and come follow me." The man left sad because he wanted all his possessions. He wanted them so, so badly. And he was not comfortable being poor. A rich person should be okay losing everything. One of the greatest examples of this is St. Thomas More. St. Thomas More, he was extremely high up politically in society in England in the 1500s. He was one of the top politicians under King Henry VIII. And King Henry VIII, as you probably know, wanted to break away from the Catholic Church. He eventually does, and starts the Anglican Church. St. Thomas More, he would not go along with it. He would not go along with what the king wanted to do. The king says, "You go along with what I say, or I'm going to take away your power." And Thomas More says, "Okay, take away my power." He says, "You go along with what I'm going to say, or I'm going to take away your freedom." And he says, "Okay, take away my freedom." And he locked him up in a prison. He says, "Go along with what I say, go along with my church, or I'm going to take away your wealth." And Thomas More says, "Okay." And he took away all of his wealth. He has this very famous saying, "I love my king, I love my country, but I love my God first." And it's recognizing that economics should not be the sole goal of ourselves. We must be willing to be poor if necessary. Almost every wealthy person that you see will come across this dilemma sometime in their life. You must be willing to cheat or hide the truth from somebody in order to gain or maintain your wealth. And Christ says you must never, ever do that. Your wealth must never be the primary goal. The truth, love, goodness, seeing the other as a child of God, these are your primary goals. Wealth is never the primary goal. It's a secondary good, and wealth is not a bad thing, but it's never the primary goal. Can a wealthy person get to heaven? Yes, they can, but only if the wealth is not above serving God and serving their fellow man. Have a wonderful day. God bless you all.